0. The morning had started like any other at NBC's Today Show studio in Rockefeller Plaza. But the air was charged with something different: anticipation, tension, and a sense that something unpredictable might unfold. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, was scheduled for a high-profile interview with anchor Savannah Guthrie. On paper, it was another leg in the carefully orchestrated media tour promoting his explosive memoir. Became clear this wouldn't be a typical celebrity chat. Harry arrived promptly, his expression composed but alert. He shook hands politely, his eyes scanning the set with the trained caution of someone used to hostile territory. A sharp navy blazer with an open-collar white shirt, he looked every bit the polished media figure. But beneath the surface, the emotional weight of recent controversies seemed to hang heavy on his shoulders. Savannah Guthrie, one of America's most experienced and respected interviewers, greeted him warmly. Her smile, however, wasn't just welcoming, it carried an edge. Guthrie was known for her precision and unflinching questions, and as she flipped through her notes, the tone was set. This wasn't going to be a puff piece. Prince Harry, she began, folding one leg over the other, you've said your goal in writing this book was healing both for yourself and, potentially, your family. To say the least, some say you've opened up important conversations. Others say you've blown up any hope of reconciliation. Was that a price you were willing to pay? Harry's jaw tensed ever so slightly. I wrote this book not to attack, but to explain. For years, my life has been filtered through tabloid headlines and press briefings. This was my chance to reclaim the narrative, to share my side. But in reclaiming your narrative, Savannah pressed. You've shared intimate details about others, your father, your brother, even private moments involving your mother. Isn't there a difference between telling your story and exposing your family's pain? The question hit with subtle force. Harry, maintaining his posture, offered a measured reply. These stories aren't told out of malice. They're part of the truth of my experience. I didn't choose to be born into this institution, and I didn't choose the dysfunction that came with it. Savannah's eyes narrowed slightly, not with hostility, but with intense focus. Yet you did choose to publish this book. To include accusations, serious ones? For example, you describe a physical altercation with your brother. You claim he knocked you to the ground. That's not just a family spat. That's global news. What do you think it does to your relationship with him? Harry paused. For a moment, the mask slipped. It wasn't easy to write that, but it happened. And I kept it to myself for years. Talking about it now is not about revenge. It's about acknowledging trauma and encouraging accountability. Savannah leaned forward slightly. But some would say that's a conversation to have in private, not in a best-selling memoir, not on a press tour, not on national television. Isn't there a contradiction in demanding privacy while broadcasting these deeply personal details to the world? Harry's response was sharper now, tinged with frustration. Privacy doesn't mean silence. It means having control over what you choose to share. For so long, my voice was either drowned out or twisted. I'm finally speaking on my terms. Savannah gave a small nod, but her next question was blunt. Or monetized on your terms. The studio fell into a hushed silence. It was the question millions of viewers had likely been shouting at their screens. Was this really about truth, or was it about profit, power, and control? Harry didn't respond immediately. He stared at Savannah, clearly taken aback by the directness. I knew I'd be accused of that, he said finally. But if helping others and speaking out means being criticized, I can live with that. Savannah wasn't finished. Helping others is noble. But there's a difference between helping and harming, and some believe what you've done has deeply hurt the very people you say you still love. Harry's expression shifted. Less guarded now, more conflicted. The vulnerability was real, but so was the tension. As the commercial break loomed, Savannah offered one more piercing line. You've said silence is betrayal, but some wonder, when does telling your truth become betraying others? The cameras cut. The silence in the studio lingered. The stage had been set, not for a promotional interview, but for one of the most uncomfortable royal reckonings ever. Seen on American television. The studio lights dimmed slightly as they returned from the commercial break. Though the set looked the same: warm lighting, polished desk, plugs bearing the Today Show logo, the mood was now undeniably different. Prince Harry was no longer the composed, articulate guest he'd been at the start. Savannah Guthrie's piercing questions had caught him off guard, her tone unwavering yet courteous, her delivery cutting but never cruel. What made it all the more unnerving for Harry was how calm Savannah remained. She hadn't raised her voice, she hadn't interrupted. But each question had stripped away another layer of the Duke's carefully curated media persona. At the heart of his campaign for truth, trying to regain control of the narrative, Harry leaned into the next segment. Savannah, the truth is I've lived through unimaginable pressure. The headlines, the paparazzi, the trauma. This isn't a story anyone else can understand. Unless they've lived it. Savannah nodded, acknowledging the weight of his words. There's no doubt you've endured hardships, she said, but you're also in a position of immense privilege. Is it possible that in sharing your pain, you've lost sight of how your words can also inflict pain? That landed heavier than the earlier jabs. Harry opened his mouth to respond, then hesitated. I've never claimed to be perfect, he said quietly. I've made mistakes, but I've also grown. And I think growth comes from honesty even, if it's uncomfortable. Savannah let that sit. Then gently but firmly, she pivoted. Let's talk about your family. Spoken publicly about King Charles, your brother William, and Queen Camilla. If your goal is healing, as you say, how do these public accusations serve that goal? Harry looked frustrated, even hurt, because private conversations haven't worked. I've tried, Savannah. We've all tried. But the palace operates under a system of silence and control. They speak through the press, through sources. I wanted to speak for myself. Savannah reached for a copy of his book, flipping to a tabbed page. You also wrote about William yelling at you. You described private text messages, even intimate arguments between Meghan and Kate. These are deeply personal moments. You concerned that you've crossed a line not just with your family, but with the public's perception of your intentions. Harry's face flushed. I know people will see it that way. But the line was crossed a long time ago by the media, by the institution, by those who fed stories to the tabloids. I'm just correcting the record, But by publishing these stories, Savannah asked, aren't you feeding the same media machine you claim to despise? That question lingered in the air like smoke. There was no easy comeback. Harry shifted in his seat. I'm not feeding it, he said after a pause. I'm reclaiming it. Allowing a brief moment of silence before delivering the most memorable line of the interview, it seems to me, Prince Harry, that in trying to escape the spotlight, you've built a brighter one. You left the stage, but now you've written the script, directed the play, and sold tickets. The studio gasped softly. For the first time, I get to choose how I tell my story. Even if it costs you your family, Savannah asked. That question pierced the moment with chilling clarity. It wasn't meant to humiliate but to force a reckoning. And in that instant, the prince didn't have an answer. There was no dramatic exit, no shouting match, no slammed microphones. Instead, what followed was more unsettling silence, tension, and an unmistakable vulnerability etched across Harry's face. For someone so familiar with global scrutiny, it was a rare moment of discomfort he could not escape. As the segment ended, Savannah thanked him graciously, her professionalism unwavering. Thank you, Prince Harry, for joining us this morning and sharing your thoughts. We know this wasn't an easy conversation. He nodded tightly, managing a polite smile. Thank you, Savannah. But as the cameras faded to the next segment and staff began to move again, the atmosphere remained electric. Within minutes, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube lit up. Clips of Savannah's toughest questions went viral. Pundits labeled it everything from a masterclass in journalism to an ambush. Hashtags like #HarryGrilled and #Guthrie vs Harry began trending. What was supposed to be a routine interview had become a cultural flashpoint. For Harry, the aftermath would be telling. Him, reevaluating him. And for Savannah Guthrie, it was another chapter in her legacy of fearless journalism where questions weren't designed to humiliate, but to hold power accountable, even when that power wore a crown.